Peter Joachim, Bob Lee, I don't think I've ever sat through a session that I felt more energized by, more challenged by, and more enthusiastic. It wasn't predictions or a crystal ball, and you made a very interesting point at the end. It's the mathematics. You went through the numbers. Tell me what you thought a year ago, and you came up with a number, as I recall, it was 8.1 or 8.2 billion. And I remember people walking around after your presentation, Bob Lee, that's not even remotely possible. It's a dream. I wish it would come true. But as the year progressed, I remember hearing people say, my God, he was right on the mark.
Look, the math was more simple than that. It turned out to be prescient, but if you look at an expected growth in claim severity, and you look at the 19 volume, and you say 23 is back to sort of a normal volume, then we should have gotten to about 7.5, 7.6 billion. I bumped it up because I thought there would be an increase in cases. What I didn't do is I didn't go analyze the increase in the number of cases. I just said there's going to be some bigger cases come through the system that didn't get through in COVID, and so I bumped the number up $500 million up to 8. We ended at 8.6, which was above it. But that was driven by just a huge increase in number of cases, and that was also with the workers' comp business going down 20%. And so that means that the liability business did extremely well. So there was a lot going on in 23, and I happened to be fairly lucky with that prediction. But the basis was we saw a strong 23 coming. It felt good. People were back in the market. The courts were back open, and we said, look, we ought to be, if you take 2019, we ought to be doing better than that because there's a backlog and stuff to happen. And so that's how I predicted it. But by the way, that was it's $6 billion for 22 to go to 8. That by itself was a big increase. But we also had a pretty strong Q4 in 22. So it wasn't that spectacular of a prediction because Q4 was pretty strong. It was the beginning of 22 was weak, and 22 was getting stronger, and we're just continuing to see that trend.
So we saw in 21 about 4 billion, 22 6 billion, and we're coming out of COVID, courts are opening, and you had a sense of confidence, but it was interest rates. Let me read you a couple of numbers.
And there's one other point I just want to add to that, which I think was really the genius of that presentation last year. It challenged two important perceptions on the part of most of the people in the structured settlements business. And when I first got involved in the Ringler board going back 8 years ago, there was kind of the truism where people would say, this is a $6 billion industry. And there's the expectation, well, we get back to $6 billion and then it's going to kind of regress to that level and hold at $6 billion. And the second perception going through that presentation that was related was, are we looking at a blip or is this now a curve in a new line? And I think what Bob did that was really helpful to everybody in the room was saying, no, this is starting to look like a line rather than a blip, and that's where we are now.
I think you mentioned at the very end the challenges facing the industry, and one that I thought probably chilled a number of people in the room because it was direct. We have a capacity problem, meaning we don't have enough consultants, and we have some very, very super producers that are older, to be direct. We're not adding newer, younger producers at the rate we need. And so in order to create the climate, the opportunity to build on 8 billion to 10, to higher, we need this next generation of consultants. And you described growing a business, getting people to be comfortably confident to add people, to not just diminish their own production, but to add to production. How significant a challenge is that going to be? How realistic is it we're going to see that happen?
I think it's a huge challenge, Eric, not to diminish it, but I think there's also an enormous opportunity that offsets the nature of the challenge. And first of all, this is a problem in every financial services
Right.
business. You know, if you talk to Northwestern Mutual Life or the big life insurance companies and their ability to bring in new agents, they have the same kind of discussion that we're having here, and they raise the same issues that you raised as well. The other issue with bringing in new structured settlement consultants is there's a significant investment. You know, there's a real learning curve. These are products with a complicated sales process, and you also need to develop really good relationships with defense lawyers and plaintiffs' lawyers. And a lot of younger people now feel that that's a challenge to, start off at a low level and work your way up to, what we see now with some of the really great results in the industry. So, we're facing the same problem that everybody has, that, the broker-dealers would have, or life insurance companies, of attracting in young people. But then the other issue is having that kind of deferred gratification that this business really requires, and that either means that there's probably some risk splitting with that, but there's an investment that's required in bringing somebody in to get them to that level where they're ultimately productive. And that is a challenge, but I think the opportunity is strong enough that we overcome that.
Do you see and you mentioned it in your remarks, that the plaintiff side of our business is growing exponentially. And we've had a plaintiff-oriented company leave our association because they didn't really like the restrictions that they were operating under. Do you see our industry as much more of a blend today than it ever was before? Or are we seeing pure defense consultants, pure plaintiff consultants? Is that the norm? Where are we headed?
Well, I think in the case, my observation of some of our top producers at Ringler is that they're very creative in responding to market conditions. And there's almost a sense of like water flowing downhill, and it finds the places that are, where the flow is best. And we've seen some real changes over in the post-COVID era of people who in the past might have thought of themselves as being defense, and now they're also working with plaintiffs. And one of the great things about the entrepreneurial aspect of our business is these top producers find a way. And they answer that question based on the market opportunity,
Absolutely.
And they find the opportunities. But you're right, the people who've done well with that entrepreneurial instinct have started to develop a mix rather than purely one or the other.
Both of you have talked about it and at length, and it was quite impressive in talking about the role that rates have in this industry and the market. And you've described rates as the primary driver in some cases. You stated that at 4% structured settlements have relevance, so that was impressive. But both from the defense and the plaintiff side, at 4.5% yield drives exponentially more energy and enthusiasm and interest. And at 5%, now rates are extremely compelling. The rates are a significant characteristic and factor. I think both of you said in your remarks that you don't see rates falling, you see rates potentially climbing, but it's becoming stability, creating stability in the marketplace. Is stability a critical characteristic going forward? Do we need to see higher interest rates to have the confidence we can get to 8, 10, 12 billion in the marketplace going forward?
Yeah, higher from where? So
Well, we're at 3, 5 today, 4 today.
right now, it's so for a 10-year, you're getting 4%, 20-year, you're getting 4.8.
Okay.
It's more-
Thereabouts,
even-
plus,
it's even higher. Yeah.
Even higher than that, I'm
Yeah.
being conservative. And the rates went down for a little bit just in the last few weeks, but they're probably going to trend back up since the market went up today with inflation and the Fed saying that they're going to slow the reversal of rates. For me, it's simply a relative level, which is as long as rates are above 4.5, I think we're in a good growth environment. And if they drop below 4.5, we might still be in a growth environment. If they fall in the low 4s, that's probably not good for growth. If it goes below 4, it just stops, because all of a sudden, I used to be able to get a 4%. Now it's 3, and the headline number doesn't look
Yes.
very good.
Yep.
But for me, it's just a relative of 20-year money being in the above 4.5%. I think is going to drive growth.
I was asked to give a presentation to an industry group earlier this year, and I changed it literally the morning I was going to speak because I thought my message would be taken as too negative. And this is what I was going to say, and I'm going to ask you, gentlemen. I don't think this industry has ever been stronger, and in my perspective, and I'm not a consultant, I'm just a lobbyist, but I can see it from the perspective of our regulator, the IRS, Treasury, and on Capitol Hill. We have a very strong political base of support. I think we have solid life insurance companies. We have a very, very solid and educated workforce. All that's good and positive. I see the clouds on the horizon that the only things that can really hurt us are ourselves. You mentioned one, the single claimant 468B. There's nothing wrong with that as a tool. It is wrong when it's used as a commission grab. It's wrong when it pushes out people from the business, and it's wrong when it's taken as a signal that we're dysfunctional. And our lawyers that we're working with will walk away from us. Our life companies won't take, except for one, a single claimant product. What do we do to address that issue? And you said we all should get along. Of course we should, because there's an ancillary problem, and that is the commission sharing agreements that used to work handsomely have now become broken. I do all the work, I want 80% of the commission. It's about that I think we could see an industry backslide rather quickly.
It's a complicated subject. The lawyers I talk to, and I've talked to a lot, don't think a single claimant QSF has tax efficacy. And therefore, as the issuer, whether you're issuing an annuity or a market-based product, you don't know that you're doing the right thing. What are you supposed to provide for a tax report? Are you supposed to say that it's taxable or not? So there's a responsibility to you, and so the life companies don't want to take that responsibility. So they're completely unclear. And on the other hand, the people that want to use it are using the period of unclarity to continue to do more, assuming that if the IRS comes in and confirms what lawyers are saying, that 468Bs don't have tax efficacy, they aren't going to do anything regarding what you did before. They're going to do it regarding what you do going forward.
So hold harmless. That allow those.
I don't know, hold harmless. It's not going to go
Got
after you. And so we've got this dichotomy with a group of people wanting to use 468B, and there are some times where it should be used. But if it's used as a land grab to cut out the defense, and if that's the use, then it becomes a negative tool, and it will drive some of the defense clients out of the market.
I've met with the defense groups. I've spoken to the American Association of Justice, the plaintiff organization, and the one complaint I get about our industry, and it's just one, is the commission arguments and disputes are unprofessional. They don't want to be involved in them. They get dragged into those fights, and they think it's a problem. It's a big problem that we need to figure out. Our industry came pretty close to coming up with a commission sharing agreement. I don't want to get into the details, but is it something that individual companies can work on together? Is it something that this association should be working on, or do we just let it play itself out?
There's a possibility that it plays itself out. I know just anecdotally within Ringler, I think we're seeing fewer disputes than we might have, something like 2 years ago. And, fundamentally, more cases, more dollars solves a lot of ills. And one of the good things about the structured settlement business compared to other financial services businesses is that there are a lot of opportunities and there are a lot of at-bats. So if somebody settles at 50-50 on a commission split, and maybe they feel they should have made 70, they can make it back the next time around. And I think as business volume grows, we're going to see more and more of that. And I know just in my experience, some of our top producers very much have that attitude of try to keep this to 50-50. And if you lose a little bit on this one, you'll make it up the next time, and what goes around comes around. And maybe we're coming back to that kind of attitude that helps to solve the problem.
One of the most significant potential challenges, we heard it in Washington a year or so ago when the chairman of the House Budget Committee made a comment that he very strongly supports structured settlement annuities. But he thought other financial products should be allowed to be used. And he suggested opening up and changing Section 130. Now, just to be clarified, I met with Chairman Arrington just a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him, point blank, his position. He strongly supports structured settlements and annuities. He does not want to open the tax code to alternative financial products. But there are people in our industry that are pushing for that. That's a problem. And that creates confusion on the Hill and uncertainty going forward, especially with the major tax bill coming up in 2025.
So the two sides to that coin, Eric, which is if you're trying to solve for a life care need for a long period of time, you've got an injured baby, the parents might not be alive to take care of that baby for a long period of time. Even a life annuity is not going to provide purchasing power for that person out many years. And sometimes a blended solution, holistic with market-based, is a very effective way to take care of that. If the U.S. can get to a 401k system, there ought to be some way to create some avenue within our industry for market-based participation. If there is reasonable, if there's a structure for market-based participation, I think it takes away from the 468B. It also provides some synthetic ability for growth for claimants. I know that going and changing 130 sounds like you should never do that, and I'm not the expert on what to do tax-wise. But if there was a way to provide a more holistic approach, financial planning approach for people that are injured, I think that would be constructive, and it would be better for us to figure out how to do that collectively than to have the industry split apart.
And I enthusiastically endorse and agree. I've heard from so many consultants that if I had a market-based product that I could bring into a settlement conference and persuade the family that doesn't want to lock up all their money in a long-term annuity, it would help settle many, many more cases. Absolutely.
Well, I think also that coming out of the really low interest rate period during COVID, when, frankly, a lot of structures became almost more of a cash management product rather than something that had a real return in it. You've seen the life insurance companies, and we've had examples of that even over the past couple of days, working very hard to provide a level of market-based return within the structured settlement, within the current function, within the annuity framework. So I think we're going to see some new products. I think there's also the sense that you can have the traditional structure as an anchor and then have the opportunity to take a little bit more risk with some additional funds. But the other thing that really has to be stressed also is that there's really no substitute for a structured settlement annuity from one of these top-rated life insurance companies. Because if you just even try to synthesize that, run your own portfolio, buy the bonds, get a little bit of equity that goes along with it, you take a massive asset liability mismatch compared with, what you're expected to fund over a period of time. So, if you have a lifetime need and this thing is going out, 30, 40, 50 years in some cases, that guarantee on that amount of money from one of the top financial institutions in the world is a really unique characteristic. And you can't synthesize that in the market because that's the willingness of those companies to commit the capital and put their name in the contract.
Well, I found over the years that in Capitol Hill, with people in Congress that can virtually agree on just about nothing, that they agree on something like a structured settlement because it does exactly what it was designed to do. It provides protection and security and a guarantee. It doesn't cost the federal government any money, and we never want anything, we just want to be left alone. And in that context, we have the support of the majority of the Ways and Means Committee and the majority of the Senate Finance Committee. So the one challenge that you have is somebody inadvertently drops 130 from our code section, and we've got to be careful of that. I want to tell you something about we've re-engaged with the Internal Revenue Service. You don't do that casually. Mike Montemuro was there for 28 years. He retired. A brand new team came in. We'd never met them before, and we have. And their questions were excellent. They know about structured settlements. They appreciate and support structured settlements. And their questions focused in on things that you both touched on. More people should be using them. Why are people settling? This is the IRS question to me. Why are people in serious physical injury cases settling for cash? that makes no sense. And I said, well, we can't mandate them. And all three of the people of the service looked at me and said, well, why not? I know why not, but the point is, people shouldn't be, some people, there's no desirability whatsoever to tell them what they have to do. But in cases involving a minor, an incompetent, of serious personal physical injury, that they're going to have a lifetime of health care needs, of course they need the benefits and structure and the guarantee of a structured settlement.
Well, I think there can be more of a mandate. As I said during the presentation, I know that in England, for example, virtually everything settles. There's virtually no cash settlement. And I'm not sure if that came about through legislation or just judicial action over a period of time so that became the precedent. But, here at the insurance industry and with, generally with tort law, that's on a state-by-state basis. So to actually start to develop those kind of mandates would be a real challenge. But could there be a real societal benefit to that? I think so. And that sense of, from a financial standpoint, of kind of the bird in the hand, people take the cash now, that's just kind of part of American life at the same
you're
time.
Absolutely right.
People taking money out of the 401ks or getting their Social Security too early, and we're fighting that same kind of trend of people need cash when they think they need it.
Well, it was a long day of sessions and presentations, but I thought the two of you put on an absolutely spectacular demonstration of serious thought leadership in our industry. I want to thank you both. I thought your addition of the Ringler orange in your slide presentation was a really nice reach across the aisle. You're both serious gentlemen. I want to thank you both very much for your contributions, and every single person in that room had questions. I know they did, but they all greatly appreciated your presentation, so thank you both very much.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you, Bob.
Yep.